Welcome to another episode of Preparing for the Unexpected. I'm your host, Alex Fullick, and as always, we like to talk about things related to business continuity, disaster planning, emergency management, resilience, COVID, anything that helps you, your organization, or your community prepare for, respond to, and overcome adverse situations. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, please feel free, send me an email. You can find me on LinkedIn. I am the only person on LinkedIn with the name Alex Fullick, so I'm really easy to find. And just send me a note. Say you want to be on the show and what you'd like to talk about. And I do respond to everything I get. And today is the first day I get to formally announce that I will be speaking at the Continuity and Resilience Today conference, December 1st and 2nd. I can't remember the topic offhand right now, but I will be speaking at that conference, so hopefully everyone can join me. And the way my guest kind of just smiled on the side, I got a feeling he's probably speaking there too now. James,
no, Alex,
are you speaking there this time?
I am not speaking at CRT, but I was wondering, will you be hosting your radio show? Can I call in and harass you like I did last year? That's what made me smile.
Oh, I see. For anyone who doesn't recognize that, James Green for our regular monthly chat this week in business continuity, who tends to follow me from conference to conference, or I'm following him, one of the two. I actually don't know. I have a feeling we might do that. I'll probably be talking with Dan Joyce, the conference convener or coordinator, and we'll see what we can work out. If we do that again, it's a lot of talking and, for about 5-6 hours. So, but that's just like the live broadcast at DRJ when we did those too. So, but I hope so. I hope we can do that.
Okay, great.
And my formal welcome now, James Green, back for, you're about 6th or 7th appearance, but our second formal This Week in Business Continuity week. How you doing, James?
I'm doing good. Yeah, this is our second episode with this topic, so I think it makes it official now. And I have two children, and today is May 4th, so I've heard May the 4th be with you 100 times. Yeah. So I have to make a Star Wars reference, I think, at this point.
May the 4th be with you. And since we're going to mention May the 4th, happy birthday to my brother Wayne, who is 53 today, I think. Now he'll kill me because I said that, but happy birthday, Wayne. So we got a few things to go through today. And hopefully we'll be able to touch on all of them, but if not, that's okay. But the first one, you sent a list of things that we could chat about. And one of the first thing on your list I thought was rather interesting is an experience you had the other day at a gas station, and it got you thinking about business continuity. Can you explain what that was?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So a few things have happened the last week. So yes, I was at the gas station Sunday, Monday, getting gas in my car. And this gas station has the digital pumps that talk to you and show videos and annoy you when you're just trying to get gas. And I do my best to just tune them out. But something it said really caught my attention. This gas station, and they're a national chain in the United States, said they are offering a $500 sign-on bonus if you apply and get accepted to work with them. And I've noticed similar things in restaurants, small restaurants in the local Tampa Bay area, that they've had to offer sign-on bonuses because there's a scarcity of employees in those sections of the market. They have a really shrinking applicant pool. So my question to you is, do we see this as a BC problem that's starting to emerge for certain organizations? Because maybe a traditional BC methodology would be, if we lose staff due to an illness or a pandemic or something, we would just go out and replace those people and hire more people. But what if you can't? What if we have the inverse of a pandemic, I guess, where you're not able to bring in staff, but it has nothing to do with a pandemic or a wildfire or a hurricane? It's just economic conditions.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of places looking for those kind of positions up here. I haven't seen anything yet about offering some sort of an incentive to come on board. But I guess also that's a part of what are those positions? If you're at a gas station, is it automatically someone who's going to be behind the counter, at a 7-Eleven or something like that, or is it more along the lines of a continuity professional? So I guess it's going to depend on what the position is, what that they're looking for. And I think a lot with the pandemic, a lot of the companies I think that may not have really given business continuity, emergency management, crisis management, any of those areas, disciplines, any kind of real focus, are now looking for somebody to come on board. Well, there's only so much of us around. So, and you've got a lot of people who, well, I'm a specialist. I do this, I do that. Well, that's great. But there's a lot of people who may just have taken a course and say, oh, I can do that too. So I think organizations are going to have a difficulty trying to find people if it's those kind of positions. But there's also the fear aspect too, that until someone gets their full vaccination, and I know in different parts of the world, there's different situations. The US is doing much better right now. Canada, we seem to be coming around, our bad period with the delivery of vaccines and that. But I think some people don't want to go back into the restaurant industry, as an example, right now until everyone is vaccinated because they're so close. And at the same time, these restaurants are looking for people to come back and work, but yet they only have 50% or less capacity. And if you're a waiter or waitress, that's how you make your money, is a full section with tips. And if you don't have that, well, then what's the point of me applying right now? And I know, having been in that industry in a previous life, it's the busy restaurant that'll get the good people. If you're not a busy restaurant, no matter how big you are, you're not going to attract busy people because they're not going to make any money. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with some of these organizations right now, like the gas stations looking for people, because a lot of people don't want to be out there in the public right now. At least that was some of my thoughts.
Absolutely. The other thing I've seen is, for a lot of these industries that are service industries, and restaurants are a great example, some of these restaurants have been closed to, dining in for 14 months. So if you're a service professional, I have several friends who are career waiters, waitresses, bartenders. You can't go 14 months with no income. They've transitioned or moved into other professions. And so now that those restaurants are starting to open back up, I have a lot of friends who are like, no, I've got a new career now. So I think there's going to be a scarcity, like you said, one, because people are still going to be afraid to move out and about. And two, a lot of people have just figured out what to do in the interim. And maybe that temporary solution has become a new career path for them.
That is true. I do know a couple of people who have done that, who were in the industry for 10 years, or if not longer. And with the 14 months, they couldn't obviously work and do what they normally do. So they've taken online courses to learn something else, and they've started to move on. So and they were good at what they did. Obviously, at 10 plus years experience, they obviously have to know what they're doing, or they wouldn't be able to do it for that long. And now they're taken out of that industry, and they're going somewhere else, computers or something, whatever it may be. And now the pool is different of who's available. I think the whole makeup is completely different, because I think in the service industry, a lot of people have thought that they're too vulnerable now.
Yeah, and I think it's really going to become a problem for BC professionals, for those organizations, as you have a scarcity of employees, as you have a shrinking applicant pool. How are you backfilling turnover, how are you backfilling or rapidly, spinning up during an event? The
Mhm.
people aren't going to be there. And it's going to be really interesting to see how do organizations deal with that. They're going to have to overpay, right? Overprice the market. Are they going to have the income, the cash flow, the ability to do that? I don't think it's sustainable.
Or could they even just end up changing their business
Yeah,
altogether? If I can't find anyone who's top notch in XYZ, well, then, maybe we don't need to do XYZ. Let's focus somewhere else. Let's do something we can do and make money rather than trying to spend and not get what you're expecting back because you can't find it or they're not there.
exactly. I think a lot of companies have seen over the last year how much of their business, this is going to sound stupid and I can't even believe I'm saying it, but how much of their business is driven by people. And I think companies often lose sight of that it's the product or it's the service or it's, the customer, the end game, but it really is, do you have expertise in a market? Do you have an ability to, interact with other consumers or other businesses? And yeah, I think we may see some businesses just get out of certain areas altogether
Mhm.
because they don't have the personnel.
It's interesting you said businesses always say about the people aspect. And back to my hospitality days, we always had to deal with not so pleasant customers, shall we say?
Yep.
And there's always that expression: the customer's always right. Rule number one: the customer's always right. Rule number two: refer to rule number one. And a lot of times, and I'll be honest, I was in that industry for 13 years, and the majority of times the customer was not right.
Correct.
And and back to the people aspect, I would have to take my waiter or the server or the host or whoever it was back to our area and just say, you were right, but they're paying the bill and we just have to make sure they're happy when they leave. But I understand where you're coming from and you're right. And to make sure that I didn't have people walking out the door because my boss doesn't support me, and that kind of a thing. And I find that with a lot of organizations, they talk, people are important, but that's all it is. It's talk. When push comes to shove, it's well, here it is, my wallet. This will rule in the end.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see further changes in the service industry because for years, the stereotypical opinion has been, well, it's low skill, which is why they're paid the wages that they're paid. But then over the last 14 months, 15 months, in a lot of countries, they have been deemed essential. So your essential workers have been first responders, teachers, and service personnel. So
Mhm.
I think there's kind of a disconnect. Well, wait a minute, if I am deemed essential and critical to the running of this country, any country, then why does my compensation not reflect that? And we're, like you said, we're seeing people transition out of that industry because of the length of the time that they've been unable to work, because of the uncertainty, and because of maybe that frustration with the customer is always right mentality, or in the US, I get paid below minimum wage plus tips to survive. And it's going to be interesting as countries start to open up again. Will those service industries have the people they need to run their business as usual? And that's a big part of, I think, what business continuity is to me. How
Mhm.
do we get back to business as usual?
And I just wanted to add one more point before we move to our next topic is I think a lot of servers and hosts and bus people that I've worked with and people in the kitchen make fantastic crisis managers or crisis management team members because I've been there. When it gets unbelievably busy and you have a tour bus or two tour buses that pull up out of nowhere, let me tell you, you instantly, all these servers and hosts will move these tables together and do this, do that, serve this group first, move this, and the back of the house does the same thing. They are reorganized differently right on the spot, and they address it. And that's, adapting to the situation that's occurring. And let me tell you, a lot of those people, and if any of them see this, kudos to all of them. they did a fantastic job because they were really thinking on their feet, responding to the situation as it flowed. And at the end of it, we'd all just laugh, say a few 4-letter words, but have a laugh at the bar and a beer, and that would be it.
I totally understand that. I worked in the kitchen myself in high school and college. Enough to know that I did not have what it took to do that professionally. One of the most stressful things I've ever done in my life. So I like that. Maybe that's a pipeline for us in the profession of grabbing former service staff and bringing them into crisis management, because they can make a lot of decisions in a short amount of time with variable information. That's really interesting.
Yeah. So let's move on to our next one. You mentioned another point had to do with people and business continuity, and that was the situation recently with a company called Basecamp. I had to look this up. I heard Basecamp, but I had to look it up because I didn't see it in the news, having been away for a few days, which I thought was rather interesting. Can you talk about that one?
Yeah, this is my new favorite hot button and talking point, is what happened at Basecamp. So we won't get into the whole story. I want to focus more on the effects, but basically the two co-founders decided that Basecamp employees should only focus on creating product and serving customers. And so they radically changed how they operate the company, and they made a few interesting decisions. First, the way the employees found out about this is Basecamp posted their new policies publicly. So the public learned at the exact same time as employees. So for you out there managing your first ever crisis management, that's a big no-no, right? People were very against their policies. Basecamp went as far as they said, we're dissolving all our committees. We're dissolving our DEI initiatives. You are no longer to talk about anything at work except for work. No social, no civil, nothing. We're only here to work. We only care that you're here to work. And basically that's your only value to us. They got tremendous backlash at these policies, right? And the founders kind of got into this stance, well, if you don't like it here, leave. And so last Friday, a third of the company quit. They said, okay, we'll take you up on that offer. And a third of us are going to leave, and nice seeing you. So it got me thinking a lot of one of the areas I think in business continuity we miss and we don't often think about is that brand erosion, that reputation. And this kind of piggybacks on what we spoke about with the service industry. Imagine you're the BC manager for Basecamp or for any other company, and a third of your employees quit Friday afternoon. I think that's a BC event, because Monday morning, how are you managing all your business processes? Like, what would you do if that was you come Monday morning when a third of your employees just said, we're out of here, and you've got to assume that more are going to follow?
Yeah, you'd have to really be looking at, what's key and what's not, because you will have lost key skills. Chances are pretty good you would have lost a subject matter expert, to that, I don't know, let's say payroll, for instance. They're the only person who does payroll, because I think they had 60 employees, if I recall from reading the article, and one of them does payroll. Well, now who does it? Now what are you going to do? And it is BC, because having worked for a company that did payroll, you got to pick up the phone and call the bank right away and say, rerun my last payroll until you figure out what to do. Because you don't know where anything is, who's going to do it. You don't know if maybe the backup person is even there. Is that one of the 20 that walked out the door? You do have to go through all your continuity and strategies to find out what you can do and what can't do, because there also may be lines of business you can't even do anymore. you're stopped dead in the water. And now you've got to talk to clients or partners that are depending on you that are not going to get anything anymore. So you're beyond just business continuity. You really are in crisis mode.
Yeah. So it got me thinking, have you ever run an exercise where the initial event was a reputation, a company reputation event? I have not.
Not it became a topic after the fact, what would happen
Yeah.
based on what we went through, but not as part of the exercise.
Yeah, neither had I. And I'd love to hear from the audience what they think about that. Because to your point, I traditionally address that in an exercise towards the end, that it's an after effect. We had a fire, it disrupted service, then it damaged our brand. But in this case, we're seeing, no, the brand being damaged was the fire. And was, like you said, if you lose a third of your employees or, several of their C team, I saw like their whole iOS development team quit. You no longer have a dev team for iOS. That's kind of a big platform. That is a BC event. You are looking at the criticality of your functions because you're not going to get to everything.
Mhm.
I just thought it was interesting because it was the first time in my memory where I thought about the brand damage not being the effect, but being the cause of a BC incident.
And I think part of what we said in the earlier segment too is you would be looking for all these new people. You would be calling HR or talent agencies trying to backfill, and then maybe having to pay more now to get those positions filled, so that you can at least get by with the minimum amount of functioning. And these people that come in aren't going to have all the background and the knowledge. They may understand the platform, but they don't understand the nuances and everything about the company itself.
And also the quality of applicants,
Mhm.
right? If I got a call right now from a recruiter and said, hey, I'm working with an organization where a third of the employees just quit on Friday. Would you like to come work here? I would say absolutely not.
Yeah.
That sounds like a huge red flag to me. I don't even know the whole story, but I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah, if you lost a third of your employees, there's a reason. I'm not sure I want to go there.
It's a lot of people.
It'll be interesting to see what happens with Basecamp over the next little while, if they survive or they just get picked up by somebody else.
Yeah.
Because now it's a perfect time for a larger company to come in and get them, because they're in crisis mode, and that's the time to snag them, right?
It certainly seems like a distressed asset. Absolutely.
Yeah. So our next topic we'll move on is the recent BCI awards.
Yes.
Which I know you're quite familiar with.
I am, in full disclosure. I did.
And he comes with his prop.
I have props. I do have 2 BCI awards. I'm very proud of these. As you see, I normally don't carry them around everywhere, but I did bring them today. So yeah, let's talk about the BCI awards.
Well, I think you've given away your position that you're quite you have a positive view on them, but I'm wondering why do we need them in business continuity and disasters? Why do we need awards?
Absolutely. And in full disclosure, I don't want Alex to get any grief on this topic. I proposed the topic to Alex. So if you're upset right now, sling it to me. But I asked you, do these awards matter? Now, obviously, I'm biased. I say yes, but not for the reasons that you would think. Yes, I'm very proud of these awards. My mother is very excited that I have won awards, my family's award. But I think they matter in a bigger context of keeping the spotlight on our profession. And more importantly, I found at a larger organization, I was at a global company when I won an award. That spotlight was brought on to me because of winning that award, right? And that allowed me to spend some time with the CEO, with some executives that I previously hadn't interacted with. And I think it built credibility, more credibility with that organization around business continuity. So I feel it is, it's personal gratification. It certainly helps your career. But the most important thing to me is if you're in an organization where maybe business continuity or resilience doesn't have as much love or attention from management as it should, being recognized by a third party for an award will bring that management spotlight onto you. And I think you can use that to help, grow your program and further the cause.
In that respect, I agree with you. I've always had an issue with awards because I myself, I tend to shy away from them. I'm the kind of person, if I want the Neil Peart way of accepting awards, thank you very much, and that's it, off to the side. I don't like the spotlight type thing, which is kind of weird, having a YouTube channel and radio show and everything.
Exactly.
I enjoy doing that, but I don't like the attention sometimes that comes with it. And I've always had a problem sometimes with how awards are assigned or dealt with, because a lot of times it's not really transparent. All of us, with these awards, and these aren't the only ones. There are quite a few others out there that all of a sudden, recovery of the year, you won an award, and me and I've talked to other people going, well, who the heck is that? How did they get an award? Where'd that come from? So sometimes you kind of wonder how that process works, and if it's not clear, then sometimes I tend to kind of look at awards and go, well, I don't really understand how they're getting it. And that's not to say that a person or an organization is not deserving, because
no, absolutely, certainly some of the problems with awards, any award, to say I'm the consultant of the year or I had the recovery of the year, they're subjective, right? And it's really difficult to straight up compare people. It's not a sporting event. I didn't run faster than you. So yeah, there's always that subjectivity. And then I think another thing, some industry awards in some industries, the people who sponsor the awards tend to win the awards. And that always kind of devalues some awards where you're like, oh, Stone Road is the presenting sponsor for this award, and then 5 Stone Road employees won the top 5 awards. Shocking.
Yeah.
Certainly, it's not a Pollyanna. I can certainly see and have experienced and seen in some industry and some awards where there's some challenges around objectivity, subjectivity, and then is it pay for play? Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's my issue with awards. But to everybody that did win one, congratulations. I'm happy for you, and and of course you, James. You've had a couple too. So congratulations to you, even though I know it was a while ago. But congratulations to you and to everybody who won, of course. But it's just the background stuff, how it works.
Yeah. But I would encourage people who are a finalist for an award or win an award, you really have an opportunity to use that within your existing organization to grow your program.
And your career in general, really, right? It opens you up to other opportunities that may not have been there before.
Certainly.
Which is great in itself. Just fantastic. On that note, we've come to the end of our first segment. We're going to take a quick break. We're talking with James Green and This Week in Business Continuity. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Today we are talking with James Green, This Week in Business Continuity. James, let's change gears a little bit now. Recently, the Bank of England has a new set of or standard or guidelines. I can't remember the exact term they use for organizational resilience. And I think that's going to have an impact to not just companies and organizations in the UK, but I've got a feeling it's going to have a wider impact into the EU, Canada, the US, anyone that does business with the UK. What are your thoughts on what they've put out?
Yeah, I've been tracking the proposed operational resilience standard since it was, I think they released the draft in 2018, and then they had a call for comments and they were going to finalize it in 2020, but they extended a year because of COVID. It was finalized in April of this year. And yeah, this is clearly to me the biggest risk resilience standard I've ever seen, and I put it on par with GDPR in terms of how deep it is, the size of it, and I think the potential for scope creep.
Oh yeah, I think this is going to be, like I mentioned during the break, like a Sarbanes-Oxley type of thing
Yes.
in what was it, the early 2000s, I believe it was 2002, 2003, somewhere around there. And it's going to impact everybody because it's looking at the supply chain all the way through the supply chain and all the different points that happen. It would be like identifying that Suez Canal situation. Oh, all your stuff's coming through Suez. Can anything happen there? Well, obviously something did. So, but it's taking a step further to look at things like that now.
Yeah, it's very complicated standard for sure. My whole speech at BCI World was just around trying to get my arms around this proposed standard. There's some things in there that no one has ever seen. Everyone claims they know what impact tolerances are, but again, the Sarbanes-Oxley analogy is right on point. When that first passed and all US organizations had to be in compliance with it, there were certain aspects none of us really knew, okay, we need to be in compliance, but what does this really mean? Like, how do we actually get there? And this standard, one way you can tell that this is going to be a heavy lift, they're giving organizations in the UK, the initial application is UK, you touch a consumer somehow in the financial system, you have 4 years to get into compliance with this. And think about how much time that is. That tells you that the Bank of England recognizes how complicated this is going to be, how big of a lift this is going to be. And I really think what's going to happen first is, do you think companies are not going to start working on this full bear in 2021? They're going to wait. A lot of companies, just like Sarbanes-Oxley or GDPR, it's going to be 2024. And I feel like maybe you and I, late 2023, we moved to UK. We set up shop as operational resilience consultants, charging $1,500 US an hour, because I think it's going to be the Wild West that last 18 months where organizations are trying to do 4 years worth of work in a year and a half.
I think that's exactly what's going to happen because I saw it happen with Sarbanes-Oxley with the company I was working for at the time. It happened with Y2K. The last 2 years, people were spinning their wheels, going crazy, panicking. And I've got a feeling the same thing's going to happen here. They'll ignore it. Let's not so much ignore it, but I think maybe delay focus on it. Let's get COVID out of the way first.
Exactly.
That's our big thing on the plate right now. Let's get that done, get some semblance of normality in our lives again, within our personal lives and our organizations and the communities, so that we're in the mindset to be able to deal with a new big initiative. I think organizations are going to struggle trying to deal with the FCA guidance here, and while still trying to deal with COVID and any other situation that might be cropping up, business as usual incidents, an application goes down or whatever the case may be, trying to find people, like we said at the very beginning, people to fill roles. There are so many big things on organizations' plates right now that this is going to add something else. And I think they may just do that, not focus on it for a little while and push it off to the side for a little bit until they get some other things under control.
Yeah, I completely agree. People are still dealing with COVID. People are burned out. And now you're going to throw like you said, the equivalent of a Y2K or Sarbanes-Oxley on top of it. It's not going to happen. Even if people want it to happen, I could see trying to put budget or resource request into the 2022 calendar year budget and it getting denied.
Mhm.
But to me, this is something that we can't escape. And I know people are probably right now saying, why are Alex and James spending so much time talking about a UK bank standard? I'm not a bank in the UK, but this is exactly like GDPR. Again, to me, when that regulation first came out, it only applied to companies who did business in the European Union, right? And then as soon as a company had one person in one office in Sandusky, Ohio, now everything in their Ohio operations were under scope. Now all of the US, now most multinationals who do anything have to adhere to GDPR. And it also inspired the California privacy regulation that went into effect last year. I really see this regulation as very similar, where it's going to first scope creep into other jurisdictions and then be an inspiration for regs from other jurisdictions. And there's some really interesting things in here around impact tolerances and how the organization behaves in the absence of management intervention. There's some things there that are really new to a lot of the work that we do. I think people are going to focus in on some of the easy steps. Well, you've got to document your procedures. You have to have exercises and training. And people are going to say, oh, we do those now. But two of those five things or a few of those things, it's going to be really tricky to not only figure out the intent of this regulation, but are you confident that you're going to pass that first level of audit? Nobody really knows. As you know, there's standards and there's what audits are, and they're not always one and the same. So, if you work a lot with a certain standard, okay, here's what the standard says, but here's the intent. And I know the auditor is going to audit against the intent. And right now we don't know intent. And so I think it's really going to be, you and I are talking about this now, and I think you're going to hear everyone talking about it in 23, 24, and it's going to be very painful for organizations to just dump this process and mindset shift globally.
Yeah, I think what's going to happen again is just like what happened with Sarbanes-Oxley. Because it started off in the U.S., so all U.S. companies, they were dealing with it. They were busy, and I worked for the Canadian branch of a U.S. company. We weren't paying. I won't say we weren't paying attention to it, but we didn't have anything to do. We weren't approached to provide anything, so we were doing what we normally do. And then all of a sudden, boom, we need all this stuff from you. It's like, wait a minute, you've been working on it for 2 years. We get 3 months,
Exactly.
to run around and try and get all this in place. And that's exactly what happened. I think that's what's going to happen here. Is they're going to, when they do start focusing on it in the UK, organizations are going to take care of their spots first, and then all of a sudden say, well, now we need to deal with Toronto or San Diego or Tampa, operations, and those places are all of a sudden going to be scrambling, because they won't have the resources, they won't have the background, they won't know what's going on, and they'll be just panicking trying to get things done. And I think you're right. 2023 and 24, it'll be top of priority again, but at the same time, it's just going to cause chaos.
Yeah, I think about the company I was working for when Sarbanes-Oxley passed and how much time we spent getting in compliance. It was almost like a lost year in terms of productivity. Yes, we did all of the things we needed to get into compliance with Sarbanes-Oxley, but we didn't innovate that year. We didn't have any growth that year outside of revenue. It was just like all resources were devoted to this huge effort project. And I encourage all your audience, if you have any operations outside of the US or Canada, start looking into this now. start to get a handle on if it's going to affect you even tangentially now,
Yeah.
and bring this up to management and say, this has passed. This is no longer a spec. It has been approved. It is going into effect. When are we going to start? How are we going to address this, and when are we going to start?
Yeah, it's going to impact us. It's not a oh maybe. No, it's now a guarantee to happen. So let's oh, and I think it would be good to say you can check out all the I think it's 10 PDFs. I think it's about 10 documents. You can find them through the Bank of Canada website, or just do a search on Financial Conduct Authority, and they will lead you through a link to get those documents. I guarantee you better be aware of them very soon.
And it's a lot too. It's not a 3-page standard. There's a lot of documentation.
Yeah, there's a lot of read. I've got them all. I just need to do some time for a deep dive to get into them, but I know the basics that we're going through there. And if you want to know more, check out my March 29th video with Sarah Garrington, who actually talked about this in one of the videos. So she'll give you a little bit of insight on there. Check that out. It's called Operational Resilience in Professional Services, aired March 29th, and she'll give you some background. And if you follow those links, you can get the documentation. So let's move on to our next one. During our break, we were talking about DRI, BCI, ACP, teams, Business Recovery Managers Association, and Association of Managers. There are so many groups right now. I'm wondering, with actually, here's just thought of this question. With COVID, do you think some of these groups now should merge, or do you think if they keep staying separate with so many of them, that they might be doing the industry a disservice rather than a service by us having so many groups?
Yeah, I got to thinking about this in January when I had to re-up and pay my dues for all these different organizations, right? So I have a certification with DRI. I have a certification and membership with BCI. I have a membership with the Tampa Bay chapter of ACP. I have a membership with the national US ACP. I have a membership with ASIS, and on and on and on. Just one financially, Alex, to maintain all my certifications and professional memberships is now close to $1,000 a year, which is a pretty big burden for a lot of people. But then too, I got to thinking, when I talk to people outside of our profession, most professions have one, like, here's our preeminent, everybody belongs to this one trade organization. And in our profession, it's splintered, and it's even splintered geographically. So DRI is much more prevalent in the United States and Canada. BCI is very prevalent in Asia, in Australia, in Europe, certainly. And I got to thinking, does this help or hurt us as a profession? What are your thoughts?
Two thoughts. I think some of these smaller groups really help local communities. Like in Toronto, the Disaster Recovery Information Exchange, DRI, not to be confused with DRI, DRI. That's a benefit to a lot of people in the Toronto area because they all know each other. They work close together. So these smaller groups sometimes add a lot more value than a head office for BCI in London or DRI, so in the US is going to provide, that group. At the same time, the larger organizations, I think, also provide guidance on the larger aspects, good practice guidelines and, all those kind of things. And they help with standards creation. Sometimes the issue that I have is, if that organization is doing this, well, then we'll do that. Instead of everybody having the same message, and you use the word splinter. and we'll splinter that message. We'll just carve off a little piece so it's ours, so that if people want to talk about that, they have to go over here. And if you want to talk about this, you have to go over there. And that's when it gets really tough, when each has a focus on a different area. One will talk about business continuity, one will talk about resilience, one will talk about something else. And it's like, well, now we end up in your situation, where you have all these multiple memberships, and it gets confusing because sometimes, what one says, the other one doesn't agree with.
Yes.
And I don't think that helps, because, and I'm sure you've seen this too, you get organizations, HR, talent, looking for people, and they'll look, because they heard of BCI, so they'll look everything over BCI. This is what they say, so this is the kind of person we want. Well, you also need some of the skills from this group over here, who has a different focus, but they're not in what this one says. So sometimes these big ones offer great guidance because they do have that reach. But when there are more than one of them, they tend to focus on different areas, which sometimes contradicts each other or adds confusion to other people that are out there because the messages aren't the same.
Yeah, I would certainly like to see more cooperation. And that's one of the things, I currently work for a risk management vendor. And being in the vendor space, I've been in the vendor space for 4 years now, so still relatively new. And one of the things I really love about the vendor space is we compete with each other, obviously, but then we come together. And no, not for collusion. I don't need a call from the SEC or anybody, but there's times where we come together for common purposes, for the good of our profession. If you look at the DRJ executive board or advisory board, they're staffed with people from all different vendors, all different private sector companies, public sector companies. We all kind of come together for a common purpose. And I kind of wish that splintering effect, I agree with you completely. There's huge value in those local, those regional organizations. That's where you connect with people. When I first started out in the profession, my Tampa ACP chapter was tremendously helpful to me in learning knowledge, and not just theory, but practical. Those, coming together with people is very important. But to your point, there's a lot of conflicting messages. And I think right now our profession is under a level of stress we've never experienced. We have one ongoing incident for 15, 16 months now. Most of us have had compounding incidents on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I would really like to see some of these organizations figure out a more effective way to work together. And I also feel for the professionals, being a vendor, being a consultant, part of my job is staying on top of as much as possible. I get paid to know as much as possible. I couldn't be in all these organizations. I couldn't carry all these certifications if I had a more traditional job, because I don't think my employer would look kindly on, well, James, you spend 20 to 25 hours a week researching and studying and learning about the risk profession. I'd have a different focus.
Yeah. And I wish leadership in some of these organizations would kind of take that approach, and how do we work together? There was some going on at the beginning of COVID where some organizations were sending out a single message, in partner, this group in partnership with this one and this one, this is what we want to say, rather than 3 different messages. So there was some of that, but I think as things start to hopefully dissipate and get some sort of semblance of a regular daily life again, that they'll start going off on their different tangents is the wrong word, their trajectories, one going this way and others going this way. I think that'll start occurring again because they'll latch on to the previous COVID situation and say, well, see, this is what we did and it worked for all of these people. But then everybody can say that. So then if I'm a new person in the organization, well, which one should I turn to? Who's giving me the right message? They could all be giving me the right message, but they're only giving me what's right for them. But I'm looking for what's right for me.
Exactly.
And sometimes it's difficult to find.
Even just, I think we're the only profession I know of where we can't even agree on terminology.
Yeah.
And every organization has a different glossary of terminology. And it's very perplexing to me.
Yeah. I remember starting the days, it was just disaster planning. Then they added business continuity. Then it became business continuity management. Then it was like, oh no, now there's a split here. When you say disaster, you mean IT. Well, wait a minute. A forest fire is a disaster. What do you mean disaster is just IT? And it was just, it gets crazy sometimes, so.
Exactly.
I've gotten in the habit, if I'm at a client site up front, I say, okay, what's your definition of business continuity? What's this? So if I'm speaking your language. Otherwise you're going to stop me halfway through a conversation and go, nothing you say is making sense because we've got different ideas, right?
Exactly.
So let's go on to our next one. And I thought this was an interesting point. Most of my COVID discussions, I talk with Regina Phelps, but you had an interesting point here. What are business continuity plans going to look like in the future because of COVID, especially when I think what we said earlier is the work at home used to be the contingency.
Yeah. So if you've worked in an organization that's traditional office environment, so not retail, not healthcare, not what we now call essential, but you work in a cube farm with 1,000 people, your business continuity plan was, in the event of an incident, everybody works from home. But now, as you were telling me during the break, more and more organizations are moving to work from home permanently. I'm seeing more organizations sell their real estate. There's a very large recruiting company based in Tampa where I live called K-Force. They announced last week their big, beautiful $24 million headquarters. They're selling it. So I got to thinking, in the traditional cube farm environment, if the business continuity plan was work from home, and now a lot of these companies are working from home permanently, they don't have a business continuity plan anymore. What are you going to do if something happens at a regional level? Again, like where I live, a hurricane or a snowstorm, you no longer have that business continuity plan. Mm-hmm. So we've eliminated the business continuity plan for a lot of organizations. And I wonder what's going to happen when there's the next bump in the night, the next thing we're talking about that we never thought about or contemplated. You now have no plan. You now have no strategy. What do you do?
And it makes it tough to, I think when we were talking, I gave the example, if I had a fire at my house,
yes,
I'm a subject matter expert. Well, I'm pulled out, but I'm working at home and that was a contingency. Well, now I'm pulled out. I have no contingency. I don't have a second home somewhere where I just go. And in that case, if I am the subject matter expert, I'm the only person who does that. How are you now going to address something new, a new contingency? Well, we'll get someone to job shadow you. Well, how do you do that now? We're different. We're different sites. We can't do that.
Yeah. Or so are you going to come work at my house, or are we going to keep an office open just so we can reverse work from home and now come in? Mm-hmm. I think it's something that companies should be thinking about. That safety net they had, even if it was a crude one of work from home, you've now cut that net. So if something happens, then what do you do?
Do you think organizations like IBM and SunGard, those places that have these remote, and some of them are trucks, ability for people to work in, do you think they might play a bigger part? I was just thinking of that way as you were talking. Do you think they might play a part and come into?
I think you're going to see companies sign more contracts with them. I think you're going to see companies sign more contracts with organizations like Regis, who offer temporary, office space, on-demand office space. You'll probably see some companies that decide to go permanent work from home. Maybe they just keep some type of office and that becomes their business continuity plan. This is all new,
Mhm.
but I think organizations, I started thinking about it, you and I started chatting about it earlier in the week, that, now what? Now what is your business continuity plan? And so companies should be, our job as professionals is to be thinking about what the rest of the company's not and get them there. And so we, as ridiculous as it sounds that we're still dealing with COVID and working from home, we need to start thinking about, well, what happens? Like you said, Alex has a fire, or you see a lot of organizations that you have employees clustered where maybe there's 30 of us who live in an apartment complex, and that apartment complex loses power. Now you've displaced not just one employee, you've displaced 30. Where are you going to put them?
Yeah.
What are they going to do?
You mentioned snowstorms,
Yeah.
which obviously I'm assuming you mentioned snowstorms where I am, not where you are.
Yes.
But if we have snowstorms up here, we could be taking out, everybody working at home. We've all lost power.
Yeah.
So now what do you do? And hurricane season with you guys, which is not that far away, if I recall. And if you have a danger coming and everyone's working from home, well, all those people, I'm assuming in some instances, evacuate.
Yes.
Now what? They're not evacuating to another company location. They're evacuating with their families. Work is no longer a priority for them, right?
Correct.
So it's interesting that our contingency is no longer valid because we're actually doing it.
Yep, exactly.
We need a contingency now for the contingency. So it's an interesting how that might play out. And even with the vendors with mobile trucks and things like that, that's not going to be applicable to everybody anyway, because those are endless. If a company has 5 trucks, that means only 5 people are going to sign up, can get them when something happens. First come, first serve. What happens to the other 1,000 businesses in the
very expensive?
Yeah.
Those are very expensive. And so, like you said, if 50 companies need it in one zip code, 5 are going to get it, and the other 45 are out of luck.
Yeah, it's going to take some innovative thinking, I think. But maybe some new opportunities and technologies may come out of it. Who knows? So we're getting close to the end. I wanted to. We said we'd share a couple of personal things that we're doing and reading or thinking right now. So I'll go first. I'll share a quick story and then something about myself. A couple of weeks ago, this is a very Canadian story.
I love this.
In a small town in British Columbia, Tumble, I forgot its name. I wrote it down somewhere on a scribble, but a small town in British Columbia about a week ago lost its internet connection, and nobody knew why, what the cause was, and it turned out it was our national animal. It was the beaver, because the cables apparently were not far from a beaver dam, and the beaver chewed through the cables and actually took some of those cables and made it part of its dam, and that's how they discovered what caused the outage. They were back up and running, the next day, but it was rather an interesting kind of chuckle story, and I thought very Canadian, it being a beaver.
That's fantastic.
And the thing that we were talking about reading, and last week I finished Brian Zawada's book, the business continuity operating system. I almost said management system. I was like, well, no,
BCOS, not BCMS, BCOS.
Yeah, BCOS. Yeah. And I'll be interviewing him actually in a few days.
Oh, fantastic.
So he'll be on the show. And I've always said, anyone who's listened to Voice America shows over the last 4 years knows that I love to read. And I usually read an industry-related book, business continuity. Then I read fantasy, something entertainment for myself. And then I usually read something self-help, mindfulness, or something along that line, and kind of go in that circle. I have done for years. So right now I'm in a entertainment aspect, and I am reading a new book from a family member who is letting me read the first draft. It's not out yet. Scott Sakatch, I've got my e-reader here because he sent me a copy. And the book is called Angel of Vengeance, and it's his first draft. So shout out to Scott. I am reading it. I'm just about done. So, I'm doing that, and then I'll be moving on to my mindfulness books. How about you? What are you doing now?
Yeah, I've got more props. Obviously, I'm reading two books right now. One just came out a few weeks ago by a good friend of mine, Molly McPherson. She is in PR, but where she and I connected, she's in crisis management PR. So you work with her firm when you've had a base camp situation, when you've had something catastrophic. And her book is called Indestructible: Reclaim Control and Respond with Confidence in a Media Crisis. Fantastic book for people in our profession. The other book I'm reading is an oldie but a goodie, and surprisingly, I've never read it. David McCullough is my favorite, one of my favorite US authors. I've read every one of his books except his first book on the Jonestown flood. I've never read this book. I don't know why. I'm just a contrarian. So I'm now reading his first book for the first time. What's interesting to me, Alex, this book was first published in 1961 and has been in print ever since. So who would have thought a book about a flood would be in continuous print for over 50 years? Just crazy.
Yeah, there aren't very many that do that. They usually fall out after a few years.
And you certainly wouldn't think a book about a flood would be interesting enough to be in print for 50 years.
Yeah.
So,
well, on that note, we've come to the end of our second episode, James.
It's amazing. It goes by fast, Alex.
It does. And we had a lot to say today, too.
We did. I thought this was going to go 2 hours.
Yeah, we probably could have, because I think there were a few other things we were
we bumped. Yeah, absolutely.
Ideas we could have touched on. But again, it's always a pleasure to chat with you. So thanks for sharing your expertise and your thoughts and your time again today.
Thanks, Alex. See you next time.
And to everybody watching and listening, stay prepared, everyone. If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave a message and let me know what your thoughts are. If you'd like to be a guest on the show to talk about something related to business continuity, disaster management, COVID, personal well-being, anything that's relatable to those subjects, you can reach me through my LinkedIn profile, which is in the video description. And of course, don't forget to subscribe. In the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.